Hello, welcome to the channel and thanks for joining me. So today we're going to take a look at this lovely Sharp GF-8080 radio cassette player. And it's actually in really nice condition, to be fair. There's not a lot to do today. I basically bought it from a chap online, but it was for local collection, so that was pretty handy for me to just go and pick it up. And it was a lovely chap, but he basically does house clearances, and so he'd come across this but didn't really have any need for it. But I thought it'd be a nice little bit of a fun to take a closer look at it, really. He said the only thing is the radio does work really well, but it does chew tapes after a little while. So we'll take a look at that in a bit, but I'll just give you a quick walk around. Now, when I'm looking at something to sort of have some fun with and to repair, I like to know that it's all in decent condition, that it's all kind of, all the knobs, pots, switches are all intact and stuff like that. Because it's really nice. If you go to the trouble of fixing something, it's as rewarding as it is. Obviously, if you can put it back to its original specification with the original knobs, complete aerial tip and all that kind of stuff, then it just makes for a nicer unit at the end of the day. So anyway, there she is. So I've got this little note here that I've put, just reach across here, and I've put this little tag on here which says, choose tapes after a while, but radio's okay. So let's just prove that the radio's okay. We'll plug it in and try it. And I won't put a tape in just to see if it chews my tapes. I'll take his word on that. And then we'll take it apart and have a closer look inside. But first, let's just check the radio over. Okay, so I've just plugged it into the main supply there. And we'll try it out, shall we? So first things first, we'll just pop this onto radio, like so. Sounded positive, so add some volume. And that's working fine. Yep, we're getting left and right there, so that's good. Just check the tone from bassy to bright. So that works okay, that's good. All right, now we'll just check the switches as well. Mono. Yep. You might not hear that from the camera, but I can definitely hear the change from mono to stereo, so that's good. So everything seems to work there, but what we'll also just do is check the wavelengths as well, the different bands. So there's the radio strength indicator working.
And singing, of course.
Good stuff. Right, and then onto medium wave.
What if we take that at face value? And
sorry, long wave, medium wave, FM, and FM stereo. Good. So we know everything works on the radio. That's perfect. We'll just try the tape while we're here, actually. I won't actually put anything in, but we'll just eject that onto tape, press play. And that's working okay. And the APSS light comes on as well if you want to go for the music search system on it. So everything should be okay. Stop, rewind, stop, fast forward. Yep, so everything works on it. I think it really just needs a bit of a clean, maybe some lubrication. We'll check the belts over. I'm not sure if this has got idler tyres or whatever in this, so we'll take a look at that, see if we need to refresh or renew those. But yeah, basically on the face of it, looks like a really nice unit. So let's just take it apart and refresh the cassette mechanism. Okay, so let's make a start. I will just say at the very beginning of this video, we've got building work going on next door, so hopefully that won't bother us too much. But anyway, notwithstanding any of that, let's go for it. So first things first is we'll get the back cover off. So that should just be a case of probably half a dozen screws or so. And as usual, we just make sure that you just check which screws come out of which hole, because sometimes some can be longer than others, or some can be like plastic type screws and some will be machine screws. So just be mindful of that. Right, so 1, 2, I'll check in the battery compartment as well. Yep, and there's one down in here. Always worth doing that. There's invariably at least one screw hidden away inside. So there's your battery compartment one, which is the smaller one, and you've got the machine screw as well. But anyway, so basically we've got the all the screws are the same for the perimeter. There's a slightly different one for the inside the battery compartment, and a machine screw just in the middle there. So we'll just peel this away, and then the screw will fall on the floor for us. That'll be handy. Right, I'm just being careful here because normally the back plate for these stereos will be held onto the board via at least its antenna wire, and then usually some kind of DC cable coming from the battery compartment. So first things first, we'll get this white one off, which is the antenna, and then you may see just down through there that sure enough there's your DC attachments just there. So we'll get those off as well. Okay, so we'll just take a very quick look at the back plate. So this one does have the aerial, obviously the antenna attachment to the board there, and the transformer is mounted to the back plate on this particular model. So you've got a 1 amp slow blow fuse just there. So there's your power supply coming through, and your pickups there off of your battery compartment. So yeah, that's basically it. That's all there is to report on the back. And obviously there's these 2 points here next to the fuse where your DC comes off to actually go to the board there. Right, so I'm just going to put these screws somewhere tidy and back in a second. I have one from another one I'm working on at the moment, which is just mounted in some polystyrene, or indeed you can just get a piece of paper or card, tape them to that, or poke them through the holes. Whatever's easiest for you. Some people just like to wing it and make an unholy mess all over their table, and then they know miraculously where every tiny little spring and every screw goes afterwards, but I'm not as good as that, so I need to just make sure everything's under control. Okay, well, first things first, I can actually see, you look at the general sort of condition of the unit, and as borne out by the exterior condition, you know it's been stored in a fairly, a fairly decent environment, not too damp, not too cold. There wasn't really any corrosion anywhere. So yeah, and that's kind of borne out here really by the radio board. Looks nice and clean. Yeah, all the filters look good, and the caps look really super clean. I can see one IC just down there. Looks like an NEC one. Yeah, but the board looks good. I can see, I'll just zoom in a little bit, and I can just see that the motor there is one rather sorry looking belt there. It's intact, but to be honest, it does feel a little bit on the slack side, so we may end up replacing that anyway. Yeah, it doesn't look in its best condition. But anyway, first things first, let's see if we can't figure out how to actually get this board out, because we're going to need to remove this to get to the cassette deck. Well, unfortunately, there aren't any multi-plugs or anything here, so we've got all these cables running from the board actually off here to the radio board. We've got some that run through from the heads down back to the cassette deck, another bunch here that run along the bottom and up onto the speakers and the various inputs and outputs. So there's no easy way to disconnect those, and they're all soldered onto the board. So this is going to be one of those where we have to kind of wiggle it around a bit. Now, we've got a couple of options potentially. I can see that there are a couple of screws, well, 1, 2, 3, and one, like a fourth screw for the cassette mech through the board there. So we may be able to lift this out in one go. Failing that, or in addition to that, there are, what's this, 1, potentially 2, 3 mounting screws that may be holding the board to the cassette deck. So I think we'll just be systematic and see how we go on with getting these out. So first of all, I think we'll see if we can actually get the cassette deck away. So 1, 2, we find this a lot in these old radio cassettes, that the mounting screws are kind of tucked away right underneath the wiring looms, so they are either hard to find or hard to actually extract. But we may well end up having to get rid of all these cable ties in a minute anyway, because some of these boards are going to end up going their own way in a moment. So we'll need to start separating stuff out. Right, okay. Right, this is the fourth, at least the fourth easily visible screw for the cassette mech. Now, whether or not this will come out is anyone's guess. Okay, potentially that is fairly loose. So let's just go, and what I'll do is I'll undo these cable ties and then we'll see if we can remove it from there. Right, well that's 4 cable ties out. There's a couple more also undone, but they're in situ because they actually get threaded through the board. Right, now then we have some sort of metal ones here. If we can just find the end so we know which way to unpeel it. Looks like it's that way. Okay, just got to be gentle with these things. Righty ho, and that also, look, exposed another screw just there, so that one will actually mount the board to the deck as well. So that could be 1, 2, 3, 4 by the looks of things. So we could try and, it might be worth trying to move the board away now, and then that might allow us to peel this whole thing back. So let's just take a look at that. So first things first, we'll just see if we can get these board screws out. We'll need to get access anyway, because the belts are sort of sandwiched between the 2 layers. Right, so this one has the spike washer on there for thing on these solder points. Right, yeah, so just got to be careful how we go here. And it's a bit like my, I did a belt change recently on the JCM, the JVC RC90, RCM90, and that was a proper sandwich with different layers, and we just had to work through one at a time. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and then this one here has the cable tie attached through it. So we'll get that out. Now we may be able to gently peel the board away, but I can see already that there's already some extra cable ties here now, because the white leads here will certainly stop that from moving. Right, let's have a look. Can we, this is the question, peel these around the outside? Possibly not. All right, let's have a look. It soon turns to a rather large mess, all of this. There's also another cable tie at the back there. Actually, it was a double tie, so be mindful of those too, because I had actually undone this to free these, and I'd left it in situ because it was wrapped around the cassette mechanism, but actually it's trapping other cables the other side, so we'll still need to get this off anyway. So let me just unpick that and then we'll come back. So the trick then, it would appear, is to try and thread the these leads actually are from the microphone, incidentally, but but it's looking like the best thing to do is to actually thread these through here, like so. Just trying to make a note as well as to where these go, just in case they come off in a minute. But basically, I'll just move the unit forward a minute. We can now rotate, hopefully. Yeah, we can kind of rotate this to the point where we can work on the deck. I'd still rather like to remove them. Just got to be so careful. Yeah, I may actually unpick those two, because at the moment we can probably almost get away with it once we've removed those. So let's just do that a minute. I think I said that was the microphone wires earlier, and the microphone wires are just there. This of course is the APSS light just there. So what I'm just going to do though is mark one of these. So if I just mark one with some black, so this is the one that goes onto the yellow, that connection just there, and then the other one comes down there. So just going to try and unpick these. There's one. I've just added a touch of flux to help with that. There's a couple of different leads on this one, so I was hoping they'll stay there. Right, okay, good. So we'll just get these two cables away, and hopefully, now it is also tight on an earth cable as well on the back. I don't know if you can see that, if that's in frame anywhere. Let me just try and get that back to you. But there is also, just in there by the motor, one lead, which I'll actually, yeah, it's quite tricky to get to even from the other side, to be honest. Where is it? Which one is it? Right, okay. It's very tricky to get to. It's that one just there. And it's a bit of a pickle to get to whichever way you do it, so I thought I'd just unpick it from this end. Come on, there we go. Fine. Good. And now all I'm hoping is that we can peel this away, like so. Yeah, so you can see how tight that short one is there with just the capacitor on it. I was tempted at one point to disconnect it from the chassis, but then you're into a bit of hard work getting it amongst those cables there. I may actually even extend this cable very slightly, just to give us a bit more to play with later. But in any event, here we are. So we can now get to everything at least. And you can just see, look at that. Yeah, that string needs tuning. That's almost like it's about an inch too long now. But it is only the one belt, which is good. Now, weirdly, I say weirdly, I'd gone ahead and taken the actual cassette mechanism out. To be honest with you, whether there's any merit in all of that in a minute, I don't know, because I can clean the idler tyre from here, and we can clean the pulleys and change the belt. So I don't really think there's going to be genuinely much need to remove the cassette deck. Just while I'm thinking about it, before we do anything else, this wasn't causing us much of an issue with regard to clicking or cracking of pots, but whilst we can get to everything, it's always a good idea to just run some contact cleaner into the potentiometers whilst we're here. Never does any harm. Haven't got to put loads in there, but just to clean them up a little bit. That's always a bonus. Right, and the same can be said. The same can be said for the switches here as well. So I'll just work some switch cleaner into there, and also it's a nice opportunity to wipe the felts as well, because you can't get to all of that very well from the outside. So whilst they're apart, we may as well try and do that. Incidentally, it looks like one's just fallen off, so I'll need to go and find that anyway. So I've just worked some switch cleaner into the multi-position switches here and the potentiometers, and also here on the erase head as well. So I've just literally sprayed some into there, and we're just working the mechanism a little bit. Again, it's given the condition of the belt and the fact that we knew it chewed up some tapes, unsurprisingly, there's fair reason to suspect that that hasn't been used in quite some while. So whilst we're here, we might as well clean it. Okay, so I'm just going to withdraw the tape deck, hopefully, like so. Okay, now being mindful, because we are still attached to the radio board and everything here, so we can't just take everything out, but what we can do, at least, is take a bit of a look now. So there's your motor, there's your main flywheel pulley just there. So yeah, for sure we're going to have to change this belt. We'll give everything a wipe, just to make sure everything's a bit clean and tidy under there. And then we get to the business end, and my word, there's some dust and dirt in there, isn't there? Let's have a look. Crikey. Yeah, I'll get that with a cotton bud in a minute. But anyway, at least we can get to doing a few things here. So for example, we can clean the pinch roller, we can clean the capstan, we can clean the heads, we can clean the idler tires. The counter belt is okay. So yeah, let's just get a few bits and pieces together and go from there. Okay, we've got a situation here where we can at least get to everything. So, wow, gosh, there's the first pass. Good Lord above, that's a beauty, isn't it? So we're just gonna clean this. Amazingly, I have to say, the inside of the unit is okay. Fortunately, all of the dust, of which I've never actually seen so much, seriously, I mean, there's just chunks and chunks of it, but amazingly, as I say, the dust has been stopped near the transport controls and not actually got into the unit, which is fantastic news. Incidentally, on that note, just while I'm cleaning the back of this a minute, but on that note, just to say that the mechanisms themselves are okay. So I'm not going to go to the trouble of stripping the whole thing down and re-greasing it. It works absolutely fine. So I'm just going to get some of this dust off and then come back and we'll start treating these idler tires. Okay, you may wonder why I've got these gloves on. Apart from dealing with general stuff like getting this dust and fluff and dirt and whatever else out of there, we're starting to deal with a few chemicals now. Now, isopropyl alcohol, probably, it just dries your skin a little bit. It's not too bad. You wouldn't want to drink it. But basically what I'm just doing is, first of all, just cleaning the head. You can see some of the ferrite residue that's already come off of that. So this is definitely worth doing. That's squeaky clean, and the erase head as well. So that will certainly not do any harm. But also, whilst we're at it, we shall clean the pinch roller and the capstan. which on the face of it don't seem too bad, to be fair. Well, no, I say that, but actually, well, it's expected to have a certain amount of residue on there, so, but anyway, that's a lot better than it was. So we'll just get that till it's clean. I think that will do nicely. Okay, so now the real reason why I've got the gloves on, to be honest, is now I'm going to actually put some rubber renew on the idler tyres, because although we've got a loose belt, which obviously isn't driving things terribly well, we've also got nasty, horrible idler tyres. I say nasty, horrible idler tyres, they're not really, they're just old. So what I'm just going to do, any of the rubber surfaces, just going to clean them, rotate them, clean them with upstrokes here, and see if we can just refresh the rubber so they'll have a bit more bite. Incidentally, it wasn't really the spools that were the issue. It was the well, it was the take-up reel running too slow, really, and I think that's belt issue more than anything else. But while we're in here, it would be remiss of us not to do this. I mean, that's to be expected. But basically, this rubber renew is, I think it's got xylene and stuff in. It's highly toxic. Pretty much banned, really, from general use, especially in the UK. Yeah, even our correction fluid, our Tipex and stuff like that, which used to have all that kind of stuff in, which is what made it work so well, was removed. Our permanent markers, had them all taken out, all that kind of stuff. But anyways, so yeah, what I was going to go on to say is it's really just nasty, smelly, poisonous stuff. So I just wear gloves when I'm doing this on a routine basis. Right, okay, so we've now cleaned the heads, we've cleaned the capstan, the pinch roller, we've cleaned down the idler tyres. So I'm rather hopeful that we should just be able, we've just got the one tyre to do on the other side, which we can get to. And then we can, oops, then we can change the belt. So we'll just go ahead and do that now. Right then, so to change the belt, hopefully, oh, there's the grub screw. What I'm hoping is, that we can actually pass this through the gap under the flywheel. That would be ideal. Doesn't appear we can though. Yes, we can, just about. Pretty heavy going though. Otherwise, we've then got to take these two Loctited screws out, but that's blocked by the circuit board, which in turn is held by these two Loctite screws on the bracket. So it may just need some gentle persuasion with a little screwdriver just to get the new belt under. But first things first anyway, I'm not sure if I've got a spare belt of this size, so that could be a sticking point. Let's go and have a look. Good news is I've found a belt, so it's marginally smaller than the old one, which is actually good news because of course the old one was too big, given that it had relaxed and gone slack. So more IPA now, and what we're just going to do is I'm just going to try and clean inside the pulley. Now this belt hadn't degraded to the point where it was depositing too much rubber, but nonetheless, always good practice to try and clean the running mechanism. You can see also I've removed my gloves now because I only prefer to wear them when I need them rather than as a matter of course. Okay, so that's that. We'll also do the flywheel, and whilst we're at it, we will also, as a final thing, we'll actually go ahead in a minute and put a drop of oil just on the capstan, well, on the motor shaft. So you can see some dust is coming out, some grime has come off the flywheel, but not a massive amount, but just enough to know it was worth doing, really. So that's always good. Okay. Right, I'm just going to go and find a little bit of oil for this motor, and I'll be back in a second. So I like to put a little drop of just light oil on the motor. Not much. And literally it goes onto the very base underneath the pulley and will seep in. Now you've just got to be careful, of course, not to get any on the pulley itself. And if you are in doubt, of course, you just use some of your IPA and give that a clean. But in any event, just a gentle oil, and that's that. Right, let's try and get this new belt on then. So, incidentally, we did say about the belts being, I'll just zoom back out a touch. You know when the old belt's kind of not only just gone slack, but it usually has like points in it where it's been sat around a pulley for too long and actually deformed. Anyway, what I do with it though, it's not actually that bad, it's just kind of got too big. It's still relatively elastic, and it's there. So what I do is I actually keep a bag with old belts that are still sort of serviceable. I mean, after all, the only issue with this cassette deck is that it was starting to, quote, chew tapes after a while, unquote. But quite often I'll replace some belts as a matter of course. And if you're ever really in a bind or really stuck, sometimes an old belt is better than no belt, especially if you're trying to go up a size, because a slightly slack old belt will actually fit something else quite nicely, just until you can get a new one. So anyway, let's get ahead and fit this new one. So the hardest part of this job on this particular model, I think, is going to be... No, we've done it. Okay. Quite often there's a bit more room to actually get the wheel, to actually get the belt over the flywheel. Right, there we go. And there's, right. Oops. There we go. Okay, so there's the new belt on. And I'll just make sure it's squared up all right. Okay. Do you know what? I might even go a slightly different size yet. We'll check that out in a minute. Right, just off camera there, I did actually swap this belt out for a smaller one, which actually was also kind of all right. It's only a couple of mils smaller, but if anything, it was marginally tight. So I've just gone back onto the original replacement. I think the thing to do is if you actually stop one of the pulleys, you actually get, can you see how that starts to move? So you can see that if it stretches one side before it starts slipping, you know it's actually tight enough. They don't have to be that tight. So that's good. All right, okay, so we'll just spin this a couple of times until it's running true. And then we should be able to start getting everything back together again. Okay, so just put a tiny little bit of lube on the flywheel bearing there. Put the grub screw back in. But now the fun starts, because we've got to try and put it all back together without pulling off any solder joints. And so we'll see how we get on. So first thing to do, of course, was to get the cassette deck back into its position, which can be easier said than done. The other thing you've got to make sure you do, of course, when you just move the camera slightly, but just to make sure that you also get the eject mechanism in the right place. Yeah, if you don't put the cassette deck in exactly the right place, you end up finding that your eject doesn't work. So anyways, back to the plot. Let's get these cassette deck screws back in. So we've cleaned the heads, put rubber renew on the idler tyres, changed the main drive belts. The counter belt was okay, we didn't need to change that, but we did check it at least. So we should be okay. I said that like I was guessing then. I didn't mean to guess. I'm sure we'll be okay, but figure of speech and all that. So right, so that's 3, and the final screw just going back in now. Yeah, don't do any one up too tight to start with, because you need to float these around a little bit and then just go and nip them up afterwards. Okay, good. So I'll just check the eject again. Yep, that works. Okay, so the cassette deck itself is back in. That's great, that's all fine. So all that remains now is to get the board back on and tidy up. So of course we've got one, we've cleaned all the switches. I'm just thinking out loud. We've got one cable here to solder on, and we've also got the 2 from the APSS light as well. The main thing is not to trap anything, and then we'll tidy them all up with the cable ties once we're finished. So just try and get this back in. There we go. Right, almost there. So the holes are now lined up. So the switches, you can't quite see them from here, but the switches are now back through the faceplate. So that's fine. And then we just basically make sure we're not trapping any cables when we put these down. So just make sure everything lines up properly, because obviously we don't want to be stressing the circuit board. And reinstallation with this or any other circuit board, of course, just make sure you've got the washers there that in the correct places to pick up the earths, and make sure everything's lined up first. And of course this one here had the little cable tie attached to it. So this is the last one to just nip up now, like so. But before we actually tie that one up, I'm just going to solder these points back on from whence they came. There's the earth to the chassis on the cassette deck, and then we've got the 2 APSS ones as well, if we can remember where they came from. Righty-ho. So one to there, and again just a little bit of flux, hopefully onto there, one onto the terminal with the yellow, and then we've got an earth that goes over there. So hopefully hopefully we'll be in business. So I'll try and put this earth back on. Okay, well that does seem to be attached nicely. So then the one with the black mark goes onto the yellow one, just there. And then the other one goes over here somewhere. Good, so we've just soldered the APSS light back on and the earth onto the back of the board there. Basically just had a bit of a tidy up, tagged all of the cables back from whence they came, which should just leave these two here, which are for the DC to the board from the battery cover. And what else? Oh, and there's an antenna to go in as well. So hopefully we can bring the back unit back on now and see if we can match these two back up the way they came from. So first things first, so we'll put the positive on first, which is that one, then the negative just there. And all that leaves, which might be off camera now, is basically just to put the antenna cable back onto the little spade just there behind that capacitor, and then we can plug her in and cross our fingers, shall we? Rightio, so I've just plugged her in and we'll select radio, see if it works. There we go, FM stereo, full battery signal, full radio signal, medium wave, and nice bit of French long wave there, beautiful. Good, so we know the radio works, and let's just see what happens when we press tape. Play. Well, it's working. In fact, I think what I'm going to do is put a cassette in. I got a Christmas tape free in one of the boom boxes that I bought recently, so I think I might put this in, go and make myself a well-deserved cup of tea, and let's see if it hasn't chewed the tape up while I'm having my cup of tea. And then if all is well, I'll have a tidy up and screw all the back cover on properly, and we'll be in business. But actually, let's just see if this works first. So play. Of course, it's a dodgy tape anyway. Fast forward. Wow, that's working at an alarming rate of knots. Rewind. Beautiful. Okay, fast forward again, just to see if we can get this to an actual part of a song that we can hear properly. Play. Some vibrato on that. That might be some warble on the belt actually. Okay, we might need to revisit this one. Okay, so I made a schoolboy error there, if I'm honest. What I did was I put it all back together with the new belt, assuming everything's all right. And you know what they say about assumption. Long and short of it was, the belt wasn't very good. It was actually out of true, even though it was a new belt. So that's what caused the warbling and all the sort of wow and flutter and everything. So, yep, just had to desolder everything, go back to sort of square one, really. It's only taken a couple of minutes, to be fair, because, of course, we've already just done it. But this time I've gone to more lengths to make sure that this one fits perfectly well. I've also just hooked it up to my power supply there. So if I press play this time, so now it's working absolutely fine. The belt's running true, there's no warbling. So all we've got to do is just, solder the wires back on, screw the board back down, get it all back together, and I'll be back in a couple of minutes. So here she is then, all finished. what started out as a cheap collection item from a house clearance actually is beautiful. Always had great potential, worked fantastically off the batteries. The radio was always pretty good, but it needed a bit more of a clean and it needed a service. So we've cleaned the heads, cleaned the tape running gear, put some rubber renew on all the idler tyre mechanisms, changed the belts, just generally sort of gone through it and give it a good clean and a sort out. So here she is, working beautifully and looking fantastic as well. So we'll just try the, I think we'll just try the radio just to check. And there we go. So there's the radio with full strength indicator there and FM stereo. And we'll put it onto, there we go, there's medium wave and long wave. There we go, we even picked up a French channel straight away. So all the, that's beautiful. So all of the radio works fantastically. Now before it was chewing up tapes after a while. Basically the pickup reel, the take-up reel wasn't running properly, the idlers were playing up. So we've sorted all that out. So I'll put a tape in now, so we'll just press play. And that's working brilliantly. So rewind, fantastic. Fast forward. In fact, what we'll do is we'll try the APSS light. So if we press play and fast forward that, it should stop when it comes to the next track, all being well. There it is, and should start playing the next one. And there it is. Fantastic. So she's all finished, all working beautifully. Yeah, really pleased with this one. A great little unit, solidly built, feels amazing, feels really rugged, looks really rugged. Yeah, just a fantastic one. So that's the Sharp GF-8080. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please do subscribe, hit the notifications bell, because we will be working on a whole bunch more boomboxes, radio cassettes, 8-track players and recorders, personal stereos, all kinds of retro stuff. So do please stay tuned for some of those. But in the meantime, thanks again for watching, and I hope you've enjoyed the video. Take care. Bye-bye.